thank you all for joining us. We're here on the Data Strategy Divide panel, and hopefully you've had an enjoyable, illuminating morning thus far. Let's look at the value of data. You have seen it all before. How has, in your own words, the value of data changed?
I have seen it change so much, which is actually a really good thing. And for a start, we're having these kind of conversations so that we're actually trying to figure out what the value of data is in a lot of organizations. What really matters is what the purpose of the data is for, because it does not have a purpose without knowing what you're using it for.
I think if we replace the word data with information, right? So, if you turn back the clock 20 years, we had a huge focus on data, right? You couldn't store everything on premises. You had to curate those files. You usually had to store them off-site. It cost money. So we knew what we had, we knew where it was, and we knew the value of it intrinsically. And I think that what's happened with the technology revolution and the reduction in cost of compute and storage, we keep any old shite, and that's the problem. It's almost like panning for gold. You have to sift through all the dross in the pan to find those nuggets of information. So I think what we've seen is a pivot from curation to keeping everything, to realizing that actually is harming our companies. And now we're trying to get back to what is the important and meaningful data that we need in order to run our business.
Value of data, we've just heard a couple of different perspectives there. Would you add anything to what we've just heard?
Yes, maybe to say that, as I said, that it came with the digital revolution, data. We now have more and more data coming from different sources. The volume being big, we need to find new architecture. That's why it's really important not only to have a digital transformation strategy, but also to have a data strategy so that it drives business efficiency.
And what would be your top sort of tip then, if anyone is making that journey now, or actually, retroactively looking to input flexibility into that?
The first thing is focus on the purpose. So what do you want the data to do? How is it going to actually help your organization? How is it going to create value? How is it going to solve problems? And break it down to that kind of simple language.
Once you've got that purpose and you've got your boundaries, I think it's a bit easier. But in having worked for many for-profit organizations, you're then in a slightly different piece where the boundaries aren't necessarily quite as clear. And so I think, as with anything data, you're always forcing to ask questions that some people don't always want to answer, because business rules questions, people are having to make trade-offs. They don't always really want to make those trade-offs, but they have to.
But you do know, especially in the business scenario, when you're having to make those trade-offs all the time, that outside influences will cause an impact on that, which is why you have to build the flexibility into it. And the way I tend to think about it is, if you think of a plane that takes off from Heathrow and lands in New York, it isn't a straight line. So they've got the eyes on the prize, they know the goal, but that plane is constantly course correcting.
Your data strategy should be an embedded part of your business strategy. And to your point, it shouldn't be set in stone because it needs to change. Nobody here would have their business trucking along lovely, doing great in whatever industry you're in, have some sort of event occur that cause your business to tank and still follow the same strategy. You'd adapt.
Are there any things that you've heard or seen or done perhaps that perhaps is a bit more unusual that actually you think would be valuable to add into this conversation?
I think really challenging people to say what is the insight that you're getting from this data is important, because I think so many of us get in the habit of getting reports, getting steering group decks, getting Tableau dashboards. I mean, who doesn't love a great Tableau dashboard? That we kind of stop challenging what is it that we're trying to achieve.
But also, when you're thinking about that insight that's there, it's not always welcome. So sometimes the information's requested, but it's requested because people want it to back up an argument.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't back up that argument,
then they want different information.
What do they want to do with it?
When it comes to putting a data strategy or doing it, you can't assume that people automatically can pick this stuff up and work with it in that kind of way, because a lot of the times that they want to fall back on their instinct, their experience, because they know that works for them. So there is a level of engagement, education, getting rid of the fear factor around data that needs to happen in any organisation to be able to move it and really use it properly.
So, given recent news on new digital aspects, exciting innovations, potentials, where do you all see what we've just discussed as those basic data principles being utilised for a company's transformation or improvement efforts?
I'm seeing a lot of people, hear about we've got to focus on the basics, we've got to get the basics right. And I'm not going to knock that as a starting point. There's probably some basic governance things, rule setting in organisations that you really need to get on with because we haven't done it in the past. But if you think about it as solving a problem, which is effectively the way that you put forward, what problem are you trying to solve? And then you fix the basics to solve that problem, then you've instantly created a bit of value for the organisation, you've made somebody's life easier, you've demonstrated why it's worth changing and putting a bit of effort into this.
And the new technologies and AI, we're dipping our toe. We're very, very gently having a look, having a bit of a play, saying what does that mean for us? We're building more sophisticated algorithms within key areas that we need to have, but in terms of true AI.
I actually have to say I get slightly frustrated by hearing executives talk about digital transformation, because I keep trying to point out, particularly in finance, anybody in finance, there hasn't been people in a pit screaming out stock prices with pencil and paper like in 30 years, right? We're digital as we are. The problem is our systems don't necessarily talk to each other because every department and every division and every business built up their own systems to move away from paper.
So if there's one take-home point, if I can be that arbitrary, sorry Nafi, if there's one take-home point, what would you want to share with the audience, both in here and virtually?
I think it would be just to carry on what you're saying, to break the silos. It's really important to break the silos because you cannot exploit information in silo. We need to group all the information to make proper decisions, one thing, and the other thing is in terms of organization also. It's a complete way of working that is changing. We need to work together, it needs to be collaborative, to have same common objectives.
We're technology leaders. I would say my one tip would be please stop trying to build massive data stores, right? We went from, data warehouses to data marts to data lakes, data lake houses. I call them data swamps. I think try to keep the context that the data was created in, because when you try to put a bunch of disparate things together and normalize it, you just wind up with the smelly data.
I think my top tip would be when it comes to any kind of transformation, you need to be able to create a safe environment where it's okay or celebrated to fail, because no transformation works without that idea of the potential for failure, otherwise you're not trying hard enough.
Thanks, Karen. And I would add to that the obsession with the why is only going to stand you with good stead. But actually often talking about the things that you can't do because of some of those challenges may be more impactful for you. So have the positive why, but also think about the things that you can articulate, that not having the connections that you want to have, not having that simplicity limits, and hopefully the two will lead to happy harmony.
How can you work with the CEO and board who are data literate, but not necessarily on your page or wavelength when it comes to the strategy?
So I know that when I work with any kind of strategy, specifically data strategy, it's that board that I spend an awful lot of time engaging with and bringing them on this journey with me. So I would say if they're not engaged, you really need to understand why.
But I think you probably operate from a unique position in the sense that you're not native. So you're outside, so you get brought in to do it. I would assume that the questioner is in a similar position to, say, me, being inside the company.
I have been native.
No, I get that. I think that it comes back to tying it back to the business strategy, right? If you've developed your data strategy independently of some of your key executives, then you really need to flush it and start over, and you need to go back to them and talk to them.
The other hint and tip, because you do get into the situations, is to really focus on the positive. If they're sitting around the C-suite, they've maybe got a little bit of an ego. Don't say that to everybody outside this room, but it's true. If you're sitting around that kind of top table, you've got some kind of ego. And if somebody else around that table is made to look really good and you're making them look good, there will be a little dent of that ego, and it will push them towards maybe being a bit more open to working with you.
And the next one is, given you're all data experts, what do you feel the impact, or how do you consider the impact of large language models and the rest of the technologies coming through on your businesses specifically?
I always try to take it back to the business process, right? What's the outcome that you're trying to do and deliver? And then how are you trying to use the data to do that? It's great when something comes along that makes it easier for us to do that or helps expedite new insight. And actually, coming back to the AI discussion, I mean, we've been doing machine learning and AI stuff in banking for 20 years, right? Literally 5-6 years ago in my own bank, we were developing the equivalent of what is ChatGPT for research reports. So it's not really new, it's just more in the public consciousness. But when you get that bump where you can actually use it to help you develop new insights from data, that really can create that sort of leap in terms of your business. And I've seen that with some of the fintechs we've worked with.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much for your time this morning, and I'd encourage all of you after the session, if you have any questions that sort of come through to the fore this afternoon, please do find them. I'm going to land you all in it now. Do find them. Like I said, the point of this event is to sort of widen your network, share thought leadership, and of course learn. So it's a big topic. We could have talked for hours. I promise you we won't. But thank you very much for your time.